Hello, friends. Blue Dragon Studios here, and welcome back to my lair. And it's been a while since I made that trailer of one of my first ever Tales and Scales epics about Irona the Eighth and her desire to have a daughter. And to her such desire, she had to go through, 6 husbands. And I will have to admit the update from my second official book that so far my editor is still working on it, and I hope by then it will be done soon, because I am, and don't get me wrong, I am very excited to announce the second book one day, which is why I'm doing these epics as a YouTube exclusive side stories. So without further ado, here is my prologue. The prologue chapter of Tales and Scales Epics, The 6 Husbands of Queen Irona the Eighth. Enjoy. Prologue. An Agreement to Remember. Many, many winters ago, a carriage is pulled by 2 stegos crossing down the sunny deserts of Masakin, the largest betadom of the Raptor Kingdom of Olympidonia. It is guarded by Raptor soldiers of the Royal Guard from Avalonia up north. Nearby towards their left, they pass by one of the many villages. The said village is a fruit farm, a cluster of claystone buildings with desert plants like cactuses growing around like a developing oasis. Thanks to a water geyser the villagers dug up, producing a lake to drink from. The villagers, the Olympidonian raptors themselves, are known for being almost completely without feathers, yet they have fur manes on their heads. They have frills on the sides of their cheeks, like a dilopho, a dorsal fin on their backs, like a spino, shark-like fins on the tip of their tails, and they have padded noses with an upper lip, resembling an egg tooth overlapping their lower lips. Like their Avalonian counterparts, they are multicolored. Among the villagers, harvesting fruit from rows of cactuses, placing them into the baskets, is a young lime green male hatchling, helping with the harvest. He pauses at the sight of the carriage on the main road. Curious, the young boy rushes to the edge for a closer look. He is surprised to see a foreign carriage pass by.
"Hey, what are you doing?"
A young, yet a little deep female voice calls out. The young male turns his head around, looking startled to see a yellow, young yet older female with a light green mane rushing towards him, carrying a straw basket like a backpack, leaning on the side of her dorsal fin.
"We were supposed to be helping with the harvest before the grand storm comes,"
she scolds.
"I know, sis, but look at that."
The younger male points to the carriage, slowly moving away. The older sister gets intrigued at the sight of it. The sister squints her eyes and leans her head forward for a closer look.
"Aren't they the Avalonian raptors? If so, where are they heading to Palbon?"
The little brother questions.
"I have the same questions, but..."
The sister pauses and gets into thought.
"Maybe they're here to greet the new Alpha Queen."
The carriage continues to make its way down the road south. The guards and the driver begin to show signs of thirst by the way they pant like dogs. That is until they come across a massive golden Aztec Egyptian-like city built in the middle of a grand oasis, protected by a square-shaped wall with fire red flags hanging up with a bronze Olympidonian symbol flying proud. The carriage enters the grand oasis and approaches the main gates, only to be stopped by a group of Olympidonian guards armored up like Spartans. One Olympidonian raptor, wearing a helmet with a big red-orange plume sideways. The captain steps forward and says, "Are you the ones Her Majesty is expecting?" "We are indeed, good sir," a male voice calls from the carriage. A silver claw sticks out from the window of the carriage and motions an Avalonian guard to come. Then the same claw hands over a rolled-up scroll. The Avalonian guard trots up to the Olympidonian captain and gives the scroll. The Olympidonian captain inspects the scroll, making sure what he is reading is right. With a nod, the Olympidonian captain gives it back to the Avalonian counterpart and orders his guards to open up the gates to allow the Avalonian carriage into the capital city, Balbon. Inside the carriage itself is a silver raptor with a padded snout colored purple, dressed like a king, a fancy black cape, a pair of black gloves, and a silver crown placed on his head, filled with a long purple mane. His name is Emery, the Alpha King of Avalonia. He leans on the wall, gazing at the city view with his blue eyes. He looks very intrigued at the Olympidonian raptors that crowd the streets, coexisting with the elegant desert flora. In the royal's eyes are mostly omegas behaving like normal raptor folk, like the ones from home. Social gatherings, working at the merchant stalls. Of course, there are a few exceptions. Emery would get disgusted at the sight of services or practices that are seen as heresy, like those healers called surgeons practicing what resemble dark crafting. They are a culture that brags about being enlightened, not heavily depending on the faith of the spirits. Even so, the monarch cannot help but admit carved glyphs on the walls, nicely carved statues, and the desert flora gardens make the city as beautiful as the oasis. The carriage makes its way to the center of the city, the royal palace of the Alpha Monarch of Olympidon, a massive temple that resembles a pyramid surrounded by a tropical garden fit for a desert ruler upon a lone island in the middle of the massive lake, separating it from the other districts. The carriage stops in the middle of the courtyard. The Avalonian driver hops off and opens the carriage to allow the royal raptor to slowly come out into the burning sun. As Emery gets out, along with his loyal bodyguard, a yellow-bowled Olympidonian raptor wearing a pattern-carved Usek collar approaches him with two Olympidonian guards following behind. The bodyguard squints her eyes with sus, holding her spear tightly on guard to protect Emery. The royal in question orders her to ease up as he trots up to the foreign delegate. "Greetings, your majesty of Avalonia. I am the Gamma Steward to her majesty. I hope your journey here was a decent one?" The frilled Gamma Steward speaks with a small bow. "Indeed it has, good sir. I have to admit, this city, Balban you call it, is indeed a jewel just like Padalot." Emery greets back. The Olympidonian noble makes a brief grin. "Ah, her lady majesty would love those words. She has made promise to make the city even better." "I am glad to hear that, even though I question her plans. But let's cut to the chase. Is her majesty ready for my presence?" "Of course, your majesty of Avalonia. My Lady Alpha awaits you in the throne room at once." The steward bows again as he gestures for Emery to follow, until another voice of a young girl calls out.
Finally we made it!
Emery turns his head to see a young silver she-raptor with a dark purple mane and padded snout, while her eyes are as pink as a desert lily. She wears a little golden crown on her head and bracers on her wrists. She even wears a fancy black cloak fit for a raptor princess. Out of the carriage, she shields her eyes with a raised claw to shield herself from the hot sun.
Tail feathers! It is so hot! I demand to be shaded at once!
Emery could not help but sigh with a hint of disappointment. The little raptor who came out of the carriage is Ivy. his spoiled yet eldest daughter. He has brought her with him into Olympidonia for an important task. A task he wishes that he brought his second daughter instead. Yet Ivy is the eldest, meaning she is the Alpha Princess, his successor, and this task requires a big price. "Oh, Ivy, my sweet." Emery walks up to her and uses his cape to shade her. "Why don't we just head inside the palace, so you could be away from that sun?"
Oh yes, that is a very big must.
Ivy pouts, earning an eye roll from the bodyguard of Emery's, as did the other guards. Now inside the Olympidian palace, Emery removes his cape from Ivy, who is now pleased to be away from the sun. That is until Ivy's big snout speaks.
But all too serious, Daddy. Why are we in this primitive place? Even this thing called a palace.
Ivy crosses her arms. A few nearby Olympidonian nobles give her brief glares, making Emery do a nervous smile before getting stern with Ivy. "Listen, young lady, we are here for a very important matter. So, as the Grand Spirit is my witness, can you please be at your best behavior? And besides, for a so-called primitive palace, this palace is equally impressive." Emery takes his chance, looking around the palace as he follows the steward with his guards. Following behind, the inside of the Olympidonian palace has a temple feel to it, with all the flaming braziers, the hieroglyphics on the walls instead of paintings, and neatly placed desert plants. One must add the grand pillar in the middle of the lobby, with a pair of doors where a stairway to the throne room must be. Then he takes his time to look upon the nobles themselves, visiting the palace awaiting an audience with their new Alpha Queen. Irona, another daughter of his, would love to see this. The males like to wear metallic Ushik collars like the steward, with colored Nemes caps on their heads. The females, however, like to wear more cloth-like colors to look pretty, along with jewel braids on their silky fur manes. Emery can feel their stares, questioning why a foreign monarch is here. The Olympidonian steward stopped by the stone doors, guarded by 2 Olympidonian guards. He turns around, facing Emery, Ivy, and the other Avalonian guests. "A word of caution, dear guests. It will be a long climb to the top, where Her Majesty awaits you." "That won't be a problem, steward. We can handle the steps with no complaints." "Right, Ivy?" Emery gives his eldest a stink eye, only earning a huff from the mentioned. Sometimes he will question what he or the love of his life, his beta queen, did wrong with her. Material goods, pampering, culture. Regardless, he admits his older daughter to be a bit of a brat. Keeps it to himself, though, not to upset her. Worries how she would rule Avalonia after his time. Hopes for what he had planned for her will make her grow up a bit. At the top of the palace is the seat of power of all Olympidonia. It is more of a squared balcony where the sun can hit, yet the roof provides shade for the massive gathering of noble Olympidonian raptors, awaiting the Avalonian guests. Emery follows the steward into the room across the carpet. Emery can see the throne itself, a carved thick palm tree. Sitting on the throne is her ladyship herself, with a bodyguard standing beside her, Aegis Patra. As the stories say, Patra is indeed one of great beauty for a young Olympidonian hen to earn such honor. Her mane scales are red as dried blood, her silky mane black as night with shine thanks to the sun. She wears a nice jeweled cloth collar around her upper bosom, along with a long orange feathered cape to display her authority rather than the bronze crown on her head. The colors of her collar and cape match well with her inner cheek frills and her love eyes that are glued to the approaching Avalonian guests led by Emery. With all the Olympidonian nobles watching, Emery, his guards, and his daughter trot down all the way to the throne. Emery, Ivy, and the Avalonian guards all bow to greet the monarch of the hot south. Dear Lady of Olympidonia, I must say, on behalf of Avalonia, I say congrats to your election. The Alpha King greets with a hint of uneasiness at the end. He has heard hearsay, especially from whispering Omegas and their castle drones, that the so-called crowned elections the Raptors of the South brag about is a bit of a sham. It is said that only nobles are allowed to vote the next Alpha. Not to mention every candidates are from the same royal pack, Clan Aegis. Yet he has to keep it to himself, cannot risk offending.
You are too kind, dear Lord of Avalonia. It was a brutal yet well-done campaign.
Patra looks to the crowd and nods to a rooster who looks kind of like her with a small smile.
My dear cousin has fought well.
The rooster nods back with a smile of his own. Patra looks back to Emery and continues. However,
I do find it odd that you, a foreign king, would come here after my coronation. Perhaps I do hope you're not here to sway us back into the fold of our old rivals.
The Olympidonian crowd all lean with suspicious expressions. It has been winters since the desert kingdom has its independence from Avalonia's control. Of course, such a claim from the Alpha Queen is not in Emery's mind as of now. It is not the case, I assure you, dear hen. But speaking of the talk of rivals, I do believe instead of having eyes on rivals, you should have your eyes on enemies. Emery explains, keeping his bow. He slowly lifts up his head with a smug expression. Enemies that we share, I do pray. The crowd in the room all whisper to each other, wondering what the king of the Middle Greenland Valley speak of. Patra's attention well claimed.
What sort of enemies we share you speak of?
You know of the kingdom of death of the north, a kingdom of pure chaos.
Are you speaking of Fenheim? Yes, I do know that kingdom from my old studies,
Patra claims. Emery gets up on his feet, as did his followers and Ivy, who is relieved to finally stand. Then you must be well what they are capable of. For ages those brutes have been a thorn to my kingdom, raiding and pillaging in my home. My raptors beg for me for protection, which is why I have come here to propose an alliance. Emery announces, earning gasps from the crowd. Whispers questioning if he is crazy. Others question if it is a joke. Patra keeps her gaze at her silver counterpart. She puts on a smug smile on her snout as she crosses her arms.
You and your raptors have my sympathies, don't get me wrong, but they are way far north of here. Never having troubles with them.
You and your raptors will have trouble with them eventually. What do you think will happen if the Fenhemians decide to take over my kingdom, which means your kingdom will be next? Emery counters. The crowd begin to get anxious, knowing deep down he has a point. Even Patra's bodyguard is anxious as he leans to Patra's invisible ear and whispers something. Whatever it is, it seems to have convinced her. Patra lifts up a claw to signal for the cloud to silence.
If that is the case, Alpha King of Avalonia, what do you propose for this alliance to work?
Emery gestures his claws to Ivy, who in turn bows to look polite. This is Ivy, my eldest daughter, a charming young hen who will one day become the new Alpha Queen in my stead. I have knowledge that you have a brother around her age.
Indeed I do. He is my youngest brother, who is like a son to me after the passing of our own mother. He is very charming and brave like father, my predecessor.
Good to hear, which is why I've come to propose for your youngest brother to wed my daughter as her future consort, not only for an alliance, but spirits hoping a lasting friendship between our kingdoms. What do you say? The crowd whisper among each other. Patra gets into thought. After a brief pause, the Alpha Queen turns to a guard and barks.
You there! Bring me Xander!
The Limpidonian guard responds with a quick bow and rushes back into the palace. While waiting for the guard's return, Patra gets up from her throne and trots forward with her bodyguard in tow. The guard returns with a young bright bronze rooster tailing from behind. He wears an orange-black colored Nemes cap on his head, along with a golden Usha collar around his neck and golden bracers on his wrist like ivy. His frills, dorsal fins, and eyes are orange, just like Patra herself. As the lad follows the guard, Ivy has her pink eyes glued to him with blush on her cheeks. The guard stops on his tracks and bows before going back to his post, a line of guards along the carpet. The young rooster approaches Patra looking curious.
You called for me, sister.
The older hen squats down to his eye level with a nod and responds.
Little Xander, we have some guests that I want you to meet.
Patra puts a claw on the little guy, Xander's back, and gently pushes him towards the Avalonian guests.
Xander, I want you to meet Ultimar Emery, Alpha King of Avalonia.
Patra introduces while pointing to the old king, who in turn bows. An honor to meet you, young lad. You must really be proud of your sister, winning her crown, Emery greets. Xander nods with a smile.
You kidding me? Of course I am. Not only that, she's really smart, but also she's like a mom to me ever since, well, Mom passed away.
Emery takes a breath and says, My condolences to hear that, Sir Xander. However, I have been speaking with your sister about a certain arrangement.
What sort of arrangement?
Xander asks, tilting his head like a curious owl. Emery motions his claws to Ivy, who in turn is grinning, checking out Xander with the way irises move up and down around him before wiggling her fingers and says,
Hi there,
seductively. That make Xander blush himself out of nervousness. Both monarchs share a laugh before Emery introduces. This is my eldest daughter, Ivy. She is passionate and intelligent with interesting tastes. With a nervous gulp, Xander raises one of his claws to wave back.
Nice to meet you, Lady Ivy.
Xander greets, making the princess in name giggle more. Patra leans her head to the side of Xander's head and says,
Not only that, littlest brother, but around at least 7 more winters, she's gonna be your wife. What?
Xander responds, uneasy. Alright, hence the end of the prologue. Will Ivy will Ivy grow up, or more importantly, grow out of her immaturity? And how will Xander take the idea that he's going to have to an arranged marriage for the sake of an alliance? Will he love her back, or will she actually love him? Ooh, we don't know, even though we all know what will happen to poor Ivy, as explained to one of my previous hints of the tail and scale. And please, I hope you all love to give a like, subscribe, or leave a comment if you want to support more of my work. If you want to support even more, I hope you all grab a copy of the actual Tails and Scales, The Empty Throne, the first book, to give some more support, which you can only order online at Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, or any retail online that sells books. This is the Blue Dragon Studios. See you next time in my lair, where the true story is going to begin with the actual Irona herself. It will be a major time skip. See you soon.